Joining me right now to talk more about that is the Chairman and CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink. Larry, it's great to see you.
Good to see you, Maria.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
By
the way, I saw your earnings last week. Congratulations. Incredible inflows for 2016 and the quarter. What a success story BlackRock's been, Larry.
It's been a nice run, but I think we have more headway in front of us.
$5.4 trillion in assets under management. Pretty incredible. What do you make of the regulatory environment right now, and what would you expect from President Trump?
Well, I think we went a little too far in some of the regulatory issues, especially related to the banks. We actually have more stringent standards than even parts of Europe. And I do believe the problem that we have, and hopefully we'll address this, when we had the financial crisis, one of the most important things was to simplify regulation but make it much more strident. The problem was they didn't do the simplification. Our banking system is governed by 3 or 4 agencies. In most other countries, they're governed by 1 agency or 2 agencies.
You're right.
And there lies the problem. You may have to address one issue with one agency, another with another. So the backlog, the need to be working with all these different governmental agencies is really cumbersome. 2, no other parts of the world has what we call the Volcker Rule. The Volcker Rule actually has harmed liquidity in the marketplaces by enforcing banks to not use their balance sheet for positioning of trades, and as a result, we've seen a big drop in liquidity. I think that was pretty much unnecessary, because as long as you have high equity standards, I don't believe you need to have those type of restrictions. So I believe that's going to be one thing that will be addressed. And then the other thing that will be addressed, beyond hopefully maybe a consolidation of these regulatory agencies, one thing that will be addressed, our annual review, the CCAR, is very cumbersome. It requires hundreds of millions of dollars of legal analysis and all that. There has to be a way to make these processes more efficient, easier to do. And a component of the CCAR analysis is one, quantitative. That's actually the easier side. The other one is qualitative. Now, who is the judge? Who is the arbiter of qualitative analysis? And that creates all this volatility and uncertainty, and these banks don't know how to respond. They get feedback 6 months later after they apply for it. And so there are many things we could do to simplify it without, and I want to underscore, without harming our society. I mean, let's be clear. We did have a big financial crisis. Right. Many families are still facing that pain. So we need strong capital standards for our financial institutions. Yeah. We need a system that is protective, but we don't need a system that harms the economy.
You make a good point. That CCAR that you refer to, basically an annual test where the banks have to prove that they've got enough capital to actually pay out dividends and do what they want to do.
With stress tests that, okay, they want to find out the stress tests of, if markets fall 40%, 50%, how are you going to...
It's a real stressful situation.
Yes.
Can you handle it if the market falls back?
Right.
Look, you are a member of President Trump's policy forum. Let me ask you about that. What would you recommend to him as being most important to actually change now? I mean, the markets obviously have high expectations. They're waiting on tax reform. They're waiting on a repeal and replace. What do you advise the president to do?
Well, I'm not going to tell you exactly what I've told the president, but what I've suggested overall, and I've been very public about it. I do believe a reduction in regulation is necessary. I do believe it will unlock some money. It will streamline our economy. But probably the simplest thing the president can do is to really focus on infrastructure. One of the great problems and tragedies of America, we're losing productivity because we have not even maintained many of our bridges and roads and airports. We have over $1 trillion, I want to repeat, $1 trillion of deferred maintenance. And one of the structural problems we have, the state and local governments' financings are not strong. Some are weak, but overall, because the pension fund liabilities some of the states are encumbered by, because of other needs, the states don't have the money for the infrastructure to even repair. So one of the things that we have been suggesting is infrastructure even to address the deferred maintenance. During the financial crisis, we created something called Build America bonds. We could create another type like that. $185 billion was raised in 18 months. They became taxable bonds issued by municipalities, partially subsidized by the federal government. The federal government got their money back because they were taxable, not tax exempt.
Yeah.
And that money went into the deferred maintenance, and every state utilized that. So if we had that program initiated right now, first of all, it'd be an immediate shot into the local communities, would create jobs very rapidly, and we would finally start breaking down this horrible path we're in of having among the worst infrastructure in the world. I think I read somewhere we're 50th in the world in infrastructure. The number one economy in the world cannot have that.
Yeah.
And so I know I'm very proud of this country. I think we are the greatest economy, greatest country in the world. But we can't have one of the worst infrastructures in the world.
You go to a place, like Dubai or, anywhere else in the world, but Singapore, and the airport is incredible versus what we have here.
Yeah, it's shameful.
So, and this is also an area, I think, where the president can come together with Democrats, because there's a big willingness to do infrastructure. Now, President Trump says he wants to spend $200 billion over 10 years on an infrastructure bank. Is that the way to do it, to get these private partnerships?
So an infrastructure bank is a great mechanism to do public-private. The reason why I'm suggesting this Build America type bond, you could do that this week, within months. The public-private partnership is going to require much more work. I mean, one of the key problems in America is our permitting to get a project done is longer than almost any country in the world, and that's one of the real problems. So we need not just...
There's the bureaucracies, the stuff that he's trying to roll back, right? The red tape.
But we have to see, this is hard to do, but you're not just talking federal bureaucracy. This is a problem.
Okay.
You're talking city bureaucracy, county bureaucracy, state. And so the problem is, this is not just one jurisdiction. To do infrastructure, let's say like the Tappan Zee Bridge, what did that take? 15 years to get that on the table, and finally, once it was done, but that was federal, that was state, that was 2 counties.
You're right, and that was a big victory for Governor Cuomo, by the way.
But also they required the Army Corps of Engineers, the EPA. So absolutely, a public-private partnership would be fantastic. And what I would say, Maria, with all the clients that we have worldwide, I believe there is hundreds of billions of dollars available to invest in the U.S. infrastructure.
Yeah, you would know, since you are the #1 shareholder in most companies, certainly out there, certainly in the S&P 500.